Welcome back to our channel, World Coins History. As you knew that old is gold, but these rare Lincoln wheat penny coins that are most valuable than you think, don't spend one of them. You're lucky if you have one of these, so please watch complete video and find your treasure. Let's start this. Top 1 today, we're diving into a rare and fascinating coin that might just be sitting in your collection or loose change, the 1944 1-cent coin from the United States. You might be wondering, what makes a 1944 penny so special? Well, buckle up, because this little copper coin holds a hidden value that could surprise you. Trust me, by the end of this video, you'll be checking your spare change a whole lot more carefully. The 1944 1-cent coin is part of the famous Lincoln cent series, which has featured President Abraham Lincoln's portrait since 1909. The 1944 penny stands out in particular because it was struck during a very interesting period in U.S. history. The country had just emerged from the throes of World War II, and metal shortages caused by the war led to some very unique changes in coin production. Instead of the usual copper alloy, the U.S. Mint began using a steel and zinc mixture for the pennies struck in 1943. But in 1944, they returned to using the traditional copper composition, which marks a key change in the history of the Lincoln cent. Now, while most of the 1944 pennies are worth only their face value, there's a twist. Not all 1944 pennies are created equal. Some are rare, and some are worth a small fortune. And the key to that hidden value lies in their condition and, more importantly, the potential minting errors that occurred during production. The most significant factor when determining the value of a 1944 penny is its condition. Coins that have been in circulation for many years often show signs of wear and tear. However, finding a 1944 penny in mint condition, especially one that looks almost like it was just freshly struck, is very rare. Coins that have been preserved in excellent condition are highly sought after by collectors. The better the condition, the higher the value. If you're lucky enough to find a 1944 penny that's uncirculated, you're already looking at a valuable piece of history. But here's where it gets even more exciting. The 1944 penny is known for some pretty notable minting errors that can increase its value exponentially. One of the most famous errors associated with the 1944 penny is the double die variety. Double die errors occur when a coin is struck more than once by the same die, causing parts of the design to appear doubled. In the case of the 1944 penny, you might see a doubling of Lincoln's features, like his beard, nose, or the inscriptions around the coin. This double die error is one of the most sought after and valuable varieties of the 1944 penny. Collectors are always on the lookout for these types of coins because they are unique and stand out from the rest. So if you find a 1944 penny with noticeable doubling, you may be holding on to something very special. Another error that increases the value of the 1944 penny is a misaligned die error. This occurs when the die used to strike the coin is misaligned, causing part of the coin's design to be off-center. These misaligned die errors make the coin look different from others, and that difference can be worth a lot more. If you happen to come across a 1944 penny with this type of error, it could fetch a significantly higher price on the market. So, what exactly is the value of a 1944 penny? For a standard 1944 penny, you're looking at a coin worth just 1 cent. But when it comes to a 1944 penny that's in mint condition or has a rare minting error, the value skyrockets. Coins with rare errors or in near-perfect condition can be worth tens of thousands of dollars, and in some cases, even more. And get this, a 1944 penny with the right combination of rarity, error, and condition has been known to sell for as much as $79,000, that's right, $79,000 for a single 1944 penny. A coin that's been in circulation for over 75 years could be worth a small fortune today. It's a perfect example of how the world of coin collecting can turn seemingly ordinary coins into extraordinary treasures. So, how can you tell if your 1944 penny is worth more than just 1 cent? Start by checking its condition. If it looks almost new or has minimal wear, you're on the right track. Then, carefully inspect the coin for any minting errors. Look for doubled features or signs of misalignment in the design. These are the kinds of things that can make your 1944 penny worth much more than you ever imagined. Top 2. We have a fantastic story to tell about one of the most fascinating and valuable pennies in U.S. history, the 1951-cent coin. At first glance, it might look like just another copper penny from the 1950s, but there's a lot more to this little coin than meets the eye. Whether you're a seasoned collector or just starting out, you'll want to stick around and learn why the 1950 penny might be worth way more than you ever thought possible. The 1951-cent coin was minted during a time of great change in the United States. The country was just emerging from the aftermath of World War II, and the economy was beginning to bounce back. It was also a time when the U.S. Mint was hard at work creating coins for daily use, nothing fancy, just a simple, reliable piece of currency. But the story of the 1950 penny is far from ordinary, and what makes it so valuable today is its rarity and the potential for errors that can make it worth a small fortune. One of the first things to know about the 1950 penny is that it was minted in a time when coins were being used heavily in circulation. So, just like many other coins of that era, most of the 1950 pennies have seen a lot of wear and tear. They've passed through countless hands, been dropped, scratched, and maybe even damaged over the years. However, if you happen to come across a 1950 penny that's in great condition, one that looks almost brand new, you're already looking at a coin that's worth far more than its face value. The key to understanding the value of the 1950 penny lies in its condition and its potential for errors. While most pennies from this year might seem like just a small piece of copper, coins that have been preserved in mint condition are extremely valuable to collectors. Uncirculated coins, or coins that show little to no signs of wear, are especially prized because they are much harder to find. If you've got a 1950 penny that looks like it's just been minted yesterday, you might want to hold on to it. It could be worth more than you ever imagined. But here's the real kicker: minting errors. These are the mistakes that happen during the production process, and they are what make a coin like the 1950 penny incredibly valuable. Minting errors come in all shapes and sizes, and they can dramatically increase the value of a coin. So, what kind of errors should you be looking for when it comes to the 1950 penny? One of the most desirable errors in the 1950 penny series is the double die variety. This error occurs when the coin is struck multiple times by the same die, resulting in a slight doubling of the design. In the case of the 1950 penny, this could mean that parts of Lincoln's image or the inscriptions around the coin are doubled. These double die errors are rare and highly sought after by collectors, making them incredibly valuable. If you happen to find a 1950 penny with this doubling effect, you could be sitting on a rare treasure. Another error that can significantly boost the value of a 1950 penny is the off-center strike. This happens when the coin is struck off-center, meaning that the design isn't fully aligned with the coin's edge. Off-center strikes create a coin that looks a bit different from the rest, and collectors love these variations because they're unique. If you find a 1950 penny with an off-center strike, it could be worth a lot more than just 1 cent. Now, you might be wondering just how much a 1950 penny is worth. For most people, a standard 1950 penny is just worth 1 cent, no big deal. But if you've got a coin in excellent condition or one with a rare minting error, the value jumps dramatically. A 1950 penny in near mint condition can easily fetch a few dollars, but a coin with the right kind of error? It could be worth much more. In fact, a 1950 penny with a significant error has been known to sell for as much as $75,000, yes, that's right, $75,000 for a single 1950 penny. A small copper coin that's been around for decades could be worth a small fortune, depending on its condition and any errors it might have. It's a perfect example of how rare coins can be hidden in plain sight, just waiting for someone to discover their true value. So, if you're lucky enough to have a 1950 penny in your collection, make sure to check its condition and look for any possible errors. A well-preserved coin or one with a minting mistake could be worth far more than you ever expected. Top 3. We're diving into something that might be hidden in your collection or possibly in your loose change right now: the 1973 United States 1 cent coin. While most pennies of this era are pretty common, there's a fascinating story behind the 1973 penny that could make it worth far more than just 1 cent. Stick around because by the end of this video, you might just be checking your pocket change a lot more carefully. At first glance, the 1973 penny might look like your average copper coin. But, just like any great treasure, the value isn't always immediately obvious. Most 1973 pennies are made from copper and feature Abraham Lincoln's portrait, just like most other pennies in the Lincoln series. The coin itself was minted at a time when the U.S. Mint was making millions of these pennies to satisfy the growing demand for coins. But what makes the 1973 penny stand out in the eyes of collectors? It's all about rarity, condition, and yes, a little thing called minting errors. One of the key reasons why the 1973 penny is so valuable is because of how few high-quality, well-preserved coins still exist. The vast majority of these pennies were spent in everyday transactions, handled roughly, and subject to years of wear and tear. Finding one that's been kept in pristine, uncirculated condition is extremely rare. When you find a 1973 penny that looks as if it were just minted yesterday, you're looking at a coin with potential value, but the rarity of the 1973 penny doesn't stop at just its condition. There's another factor that can increase the value of these coins dramatically: minting errors. That's right, errors made during the minting process can transform an ordinary coin into a highly coveted collector's item. These errors can range from small imperfections to major misprints, and they can make all the difference in the value of your coin. For example, one of the most sought-after errors in the 1973 penny is the double die variety. This is where the die used to strike the coin was misaligned, causing the design to be stamped twice. The result is a visible doubling effect on parts of the coin, such as Lincoln's portrait or the inscriptions around the coin. Collectors go wild for these types of double die errors because they make the coin unique and stand out from the rest. Another potential error that can increase the value of your 1973 penny is the off-center strike. This occurs when the coin is struck incorrectly, and the design is misaligned with the edges of the coin. The result is a coin that looks slightly off balance, sometimes with parts of the design missing. While these off-center strikes are rare, they're extremely valuable to collectors who are always looking for something different and unique. So, what does all this mean for the 1973 penny? Well, if you happen to have one in exceptional condition or one with a rare minting error, you could be holding a coin that's worth far more than its face value. In fact, some 1973 pennies have been known to fetch as much as $72,000, that's right, $72,000 for a single penny. It's hard to believe that a coin worth just 1 cent could be worth so much, but it's true. A 1973 penny with the right combination of rarity, condition, and minting errors can make you a very happy coin collector. So, the next time you're going through your pennies, make sure to look carefully. You might just stumble upon a hidden gem that could change your life. Remember, coin collecting is all about paying attention to the details, checking the condition, looking for errors, and learning about the history behind each coin. You never know what you could find, and as we've seen with the 1973 penny, those small details can add up to big money. Top 4. We're talking about the 1981 cent coin, a seemingly ordinary penny, but it holds some intriguing secrets that could make it worth a lot more than you'd think. So, if you've got a 1980 penny sitting around, or you're just getting started with coin collecting, this is one video you don't want to miss. The 1981 cent coin was minted at a time when the United States was in a period of economic stability. This penny, just like most of its counterparts, is a part of the classic Lincoln series. With President Abraham Lincoln's portrait gracing the front and the iconic memorial design on the reverse, this coin might look like any other copper penny. But here's where things get interesting: not all 1980 pennies are created equal. While most were circulated and spent as everyday currency, some rare coins were struck with imperfections, or preserved in such pristine condition, that they've now become highly valuable to collectors. What makes the 1980 penny stand out in the world of coin collecting? Let's start with its rarity. You see, most coins that were minted in the 1980s, including the penny, were produced in large quantities to meet the demands of the growing economy. As a result, most of these coins have been used, worn down, and are still in circulation today. But here's the catch: finding one of these pennies in mint or near mint condition is a rare occurrence. Because most of them have been heavily circulated, the few that have survived in excellent condition have become highly sought after by collectors. So, if you've got a 1980 penny that looks like it's just been struck, sharp details, no wear, and no tarnish, you may have stumbled upon something special. But there's another factor that can significantly increase the value of the 1980 penny: minting errors. These errors are what truly set some of these coins apart from the rest and make them worth much more than their face value. Minting errors happen when there's a mistake during the production process. For example, a common error found in coins like the 1980 penny is the double die variety. This occurs when the die used to strike the coin is misaligned, causing part of the design to be doubled. On a 1980 penny, this could mean a slight doubling of Lincoln's image or the date. These types of errors are rare, and coin collectors are always on the lookout for them. Another error you might come across is the off-center strike. This happens when the coin is not perfectly aligned when it's struck by the minting press. As a result, part of the design is cut off, or it looks off-center. These errors are incredibly rare and highly valuable. Off-center pennies are unique and stand out, which makes them highly sought after by collectors looking to complete their collections with the most unusual and rare pieces. Now, you might be wondering just how much a 1980 penny could be worth if it's in great condition or has one of these rare errors. Well, here's the exciting part: a 1980 penny in excellent condition or with a significant error can be worth far more than its face value. In fact, the most valuable 1980 pennies have been known to sell for as much as $69,000. Yes, you heard that right, $69,000 for a single penny. It's hard to believe that a small, copper coin could be worth such a large sum of money, but when you factor in rarity, condition, and errors, the value skyrockets. If you've got a 1980 penny tucked away in your collection, or if you happen to find one in your pocket change, you might just have a rare treasure worth a small fortune. So, how do you know if your 1980 penny could be worth this much? Start by checking the condition. Is it in near perfect, uncirculated condition? If so, it could already be worth more than a regular penny. But if you spot any minting errors like a double die or an off-center strike, then you might just have a rare, high-value coin in your hands. Coin collecting is all about paying attention to the details, and sometimes, the smallest imperfections or the best preserved coins can be the ones that bring the most value. If you're just starting out or you've been collecting for years, always take the time to check your coins for anything out of the ordinary. You never know when you'll find a hidden gem that could be worth a lot more than you expected. Top 5. We're diving into a fascinating piece of history: the 1961-cent coin. It may look like just another penny, but trust me, this little coin has a story and a value that might just surprise you. The 1961-cent coin was minted during a period of significant change in the United States. The nation was just a few years away from the beginning of the 1960s, a decade that would bring a whirlwind of political, cultural, and technological shifts. The penny, with its iconic image of Abraham Lincoln, had already been in circulation for many years, but in 1960, the U.S. Mint made some important decisions that would affect the value of these coins for collectors today. When most people think of the 1960 penny, they likely picture the familiar copper coin with Lincoln's portrait on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. It seems like an everyday penny, right? But here's the thing: rare coins often hide in plain sight. The 1960 penny is one of those coins that might look ordinary at first glance, but when you dig a little deeper, you'll find that it has a certain rarity and value that make it stand out in the world of coin collecting. The key to understanding the value of the 1960 penny lies in its scarcity, especially when it comes to finding one in top-notch condition. Sure, millions of 1960 pennies were produced, but over time, most of them were used in daily transactions, becoming worn, scratched, and tarnished. But here's where the collectors come in, the ones who are always on the lookout for pennies that have been preserved in pristine condition. When you find a 1960 penny that's virtually untouched, with sharp details and no signs of wear, you're holding a coin that's far more valuable than its face value, and then there are the minting errors. If you've watched our previous videos, you know that errors can make a coin incredibly valuable, and the 1960 penny is no exception. One of the most sought-after varieties of the 1960 penny is the famous double die variety. This occurs when the die used to strike the coin is misaligned, causing the image to be stamped twice. As a result, parts of the design, like Lincoln's portrait or the date, appear doubled. If you come across a 1960 penny with this error, you've found a true treasure. Double die pennies are highly sought after by collectors, and they can command much higher prices. Another error that can make the 1960 penny worth a lot more is the repunched mintmark error. This happens when the mintmark on the coin, which indicates where it was minted, is accidentally struck multiple times, creating a blurry or doubled mintmark. This type of error is rare, but if you find a 1960 penny with a repunched mintmark, it could be worth a significant amount to the right collector. Now, you might be asking just how much a 1960 penny with these characteristics could be worth. Well, if you happen to have one of these rare, error-free, or error coin 1960 pennies, you could be holding a coin worth far more than the usual 1-cent price. Some of these coins have been known to fetch as much as $64,000, that's right, $64,000 for a single penny. It's incredible to think that a coin worth just 1 cent could be valued at such a high amount, but with the right combination of rarity, condition, and minting errors, the value of the 1960 penny skyrockets. So, if you've got one of these rare pennies in your collection, or if you come across one while going through your spare change, you might just be holding a small fortune. Coin collecting is all about paying attention to the details, and in the case of the 1960 penny, those details could make all the difference. Whether it's a minting error, an uncirculated coin, or even just a well-preserved example of this piece of history, the 1960 penny could be worth far more than you ever expected. So, next time you're flipping through your coin collection or rummaging through your jar of change, remember to take a closer look at those pennies. A 1960 penny in good condition, especially one with an error, could be worth a small fortune. Who knows, you might just have a $64,000 penny waiting to be discovered.